Hello and welcome to Worst Quality Crab, a podcast of Asian American stories and recipes from best quality hearts. I'm your host, Freesia Lee. Joining me as always is my husband and producer, Sam.
Hello.
And joining us this episode is a different Sam, another Sam. We are so glad to have Sam Lugtu. She lives and works in the Bay Area in healthcare communications. She loves getting together with friends and family over a great meal and is always on the lookout for new recipes and restaurants to try. And if her last name sounds a little bit familiar, it's because she is the sister of past guest Nicole Lugtu. Sam, hi. We're so happy to have you here.
Hi. I'm very happy to be here as well.
Yay. I think I wanted you to come on the show even before Nicole recorded her episode. Is that weird?
No, not at all.
I think we'll get into this, and this is maybe like a spoiler for what you're going to talk about, but when she told me her dish, she told me what she thought your favorite was, and I was like, I want to try that. I want to talk about that thing. Like, Yay, tinola chicken soup sounds great, but yours sounds a little more up my alley.
Oh, I see.
And with that, let's just jump right into it so that listeners aren't like, stop talking about it and just talk about it. What is your childhood comfort dish and who was making it? All of the things.
Yeah, my favorite childhood comfort dish is called Nilaga. And it's basically a Filipino beef stew. I would describe it as like, you know how the French have like pot au feu, where it's like beef and vegetables all mixed together. This is basically the Filipino version. So growing up, my dad would make it, usually on Sundays. Yeah, that's how I kind of attribute that dish, just like our sort of weekly, every Sunday lunch kind of meal. And yeah, so basically it's a stew with beef, cabbage, potatoes, and chorizo, which actually is not traditionally in it, but it's something that my dad's family has always had in their nilaga. So yeah, and it sounds very simple, but I think what makes it special is that it has fish sauce in it. I think that's what really kind of makes it Filipino. It has to be the squid brand. I think my sister mentioned squid.
We know about the Lugtu sisters and squid brand fish sauce.
Yeah, it has to be the squid brand. I think that has just the most flavor, and it's what we grew up with as well. So yeah, that's the dish. And like, I don't think we've ever had it like at a restaurant. Like we've always seen it on the menu, but we never order it. So honestly, my dad's nilagas is the only one that I've ever known. And tying this back to France, actually. So I taught English in France many years ago, and I was living with a host family, and I decided to make them nilaga because I thought, okay, these are very like simple, like easy ingredients to find in France, you know, like beef and all the veggies and stuff. And so I made it for them, which was pretty cool. And I was like really curious, like, I wonder what they're going to think, you know, like, is this going to, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, maybe they'll just see it's like pot au feu or something. And but with the fish sauce element, I was a little like, oh, I wonder what they'll think about it. And they loved it, which was what really made me happy. But what was really funny about that too is that the French always need to have a baguette on the table, like no matter what. And so they still had the baguette on the table, and they were, even though we had it with jasmine rice, they still like took pieces of the baguette and like sopped up the soup.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, both sounds good to me.
I know, right?
Like a double carb.
That's a bad idea. Yeah. Yeah, I can't be mad at that.
No.
So yeah, that's the dish. And yeah, I can actually taste it as I'm like just eating it right now.
I love that. I want to taste it. It sounds so good.
Yeah, and it's very simple to make. It takes a long time, but it's well worth it. And it's one of those dishes that tastes the best the next day when all those flavors are like incorporated and mixed together. And to this day, when my sister and I are you know, visiting our parents in Concord, our dad will have already made nilaga for us to, you know, either enjoy that day for lunch or like take home with us. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is it a more solid Spanish chorizo or like a looser Mexican chorizo?
Oh, so it's closer to the Spanish chorizo. It's actually called chorizo de Bilbao. And there's a certain brand, and I can visualize it right now, But I can't remember the name exactly, but it's like you find it in the frozen section at the Asian grocery. So you can find it at Seafood City or Ranch 99. But it's in a green package. I know that just has a green label on it. And that's the
Nice.
one that my dad tends to use.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sam, that's a good question, actually, because I was like, in my mind, I was thinking of it like a Mexican chorizo. Yeah, like a pan fried.
Yeah,
like
the crumbly
Yeah,
kind.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which sounds pretty good too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Nicole, my sister, she's not a fan of the chorizo. So
What?
Yeah, she does.
Nicole, we're going to talk about this. Questions.
Yeah. Also, one element of Nilaga I forgot to add is that my dad adds like plantains to it as well.
Oh, wow.
And he uses this frozen plantain that you can also find at the Asian grocery. And he prefers to use those because those are like frozen at like peak ripeness. Whereas if you use like a fresher plantain, it's just different. I don't know. That's just like his preference. It's always like every time it'll be like the right amount of sweetness to go into it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
This sounds incredible.
It's a good one.
It's so endearing to me that you guys, as much as I know your family eats out, and we'll talk about that more, that you have never ordered it.
Yeah.
Just to like keep the pristine, untouched like image of your dad's Nilaga.
It sounds pretty unique.
Yeah, his also sounds very unique.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's interesting because I've talked about this dish with my friends who are also like Filipino, and some of them have said like, oh, like you have that every Sunday. Like that's usually like kind of a special occasion type of dish. Like, I don't know, maybe to celebrate a birthday or whatever. And I'm like, interesting, because that's not really how we ate it. It was literally just like our Sunday, kind of like our version of like Sunday roast, you know? It was just like our usual like Sunday meal. So yeah, that's very interesting to me as well. Just how Nilaga is interpreted by other people who are Filipino. Or just, you know, how they eat it and everything. But yeah.
Highly speculative question, or question that I have that you will have to speculate on. Do you think your dad ate it as a special occasion dish growing up, or was it like pretty regular for him?
You know what? I don't think it was necessarily a special occasion dish for him. I don't remember him describing it in that way. I think it was eaten like how we eat it now, just sort of a regular sort of weekend Sunday meal. But I remember distinctly like that chorizo part, which I don't even know how that came into the fold, like how that was necessarily like became a thing. Maybe that's why we don't order at restaurants, because we know they won't have the chorizo. It just wouldn't taste the same. But it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, we can get into that more, but you know, our family has a very set way of like ordering certain things at certain restaurants, and Nilaga is just never part of the menu when we go to Filipino restaurants. So like Nilaga is a dish that my dad will for sure like make. Like that's something that he cooks a lot of dishes, but when we do have Filipino food out, like those are usually dishes that he wouldn't normally make at home. You know, because there's just so many good Filipino restaurants around here, and it's just some of them are just easier to pick up. But Nilaga is always just something that he's like has always enjoyed making for us. I think that's one of my dad's love languages, like acts of like full cooking. Like, oh yeah.
I was going to ask if you ever make this, but like, no, you could go home to your dad all of the time. Why would you?
Yeah, I literally made it only that one time in France, and I could very well make it on my own, but you know, even getting the recipe from him was interesting. I think you know what I'm going to say, where it's like, but like how much beef, or like how much? I mean, some ingredients had like amounts, but I had to ask like, well, how many pounds of beef though, or like how much like bok choy and green beans, and he's like, oh well, it's like anyone's preference, and like okay, but like
but like when you do it,
yeah. Yeah, or like what kind of potatoes. But I truly feel like if I made it, it probably wouldn't taste the same. I don't know, it's just I don't know. He has this magic touch with it. I've certainly made other dishes of his, other Filipino dishes that he makes on my own, and they've turned out pretty well. But with Nilaga, I don't know. The one in France turned out fine, I think, from what I remember. But
is it just too special?
I think it's just too special. Yeah. I think it's just knowing that like he made it and it's going to be great. It's been a day since it's been made, so it's going to be like that peak flavor. Yeah, I think that's what it is for sure.
Totally fair. I get that.
Yeah.
Talk about the other dishes that you have made, because a recurring theme on this show seems to be people being kind of intimidated to cook their own culture's foods. And that seems to not be the case with you or your sister. How did you get over that hurdle?
Yeah. I mean, I think for a while it was just because I thought, oh, well, I can't make it as good as my dad's, But, and I think my sister's actually, between the two of us, she's made like tinola more times, even though like, I mean, you both notice I'm not really a big fan of tinola. I've never made that. But I've made a dish called picadillo, which is like ground beef with potatoes, tomatoes, and just fish sauce and onion. And I've been able to make that pretty successfully, like to exactly how my dad makes it. And I did that. That's probably the most recent dish of his that I've made on my own. And there's also another dish called torta, which is like an omelet, which basically has all the ingredients of picadillo without the water put into and mixed with egg and turned into an omelet, essentially. And then you would have that with rice and banana ketchup. I'm a huge fan of banana ketchup. I love it. I love it so much.
We have learned about banana ketchup.
Oh, it has to be Jufran too. It has to be that brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are probably the two dishes of his that I've made, but not very frequently. It's funny, like living in Berkeley, there are no Filipino restaurants in this area, which is kind of like annoying. I mean, I guess there is one place in the Richmond area called Kabalen, which is not a far drive. Like it's half an hour or so, but it's still a drive to get like really good Filipino food. But honestly, it's like I only really ever have Filipino food when I'm at home visiting my parents. Either, my dad makes nilaga or they pick up food from a Filipino restaurant nearby. But yeah, sometimes I do get that craving and I'm like, oh, like, what do I do?
You go home.
I go home. Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Yeah.
How did you learn how to make these dishes? And when you make them now, do you like consult your father right away, or do you just? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I always call him to ask, like, what is the recipe for this again? And he'll like email it to me or text it to me, and then I'll probably have to ask for like exact amounts of things.
And were you like watching him in the kitchen when you were younger, or?
Yeah, I think a core childhood memory of mine is seeing like my dad cooking like all the time. And he was my mom cooks as well, but it was mostly my dad who like cooked all the time. And it was across all cuisines, not only Filipino food, but Italian and American. Like he's very experimental with like a lot of dishes too. Just, he was very curious about like recipes. To this day, like he enjoys cooking. Again, I think that's truly his love language. And I'm really happy about that because my sister and I, in turn, love to cook. For us, it's like our way of sort of winding down at the end of the day. We enjoy just making food. And when we used to live together, we would cook together as well. And that was always just really fun and kind of like our bonding activity. Our family is just so centered around food. I think it's not only like my dad's love language, cooking, and like food in general. It's like our family's love language. And it's always just been like that. Not only enjoying my dad's and my mom's cooking at home, but we're always like going out to eat, driving any distance to go to a particular restaurant. And it's just like our thing. And it's interesting because when I would tell, like on the weekends, we would do that, right? And I'd ask my friends like, oh, what'd you do on the weekend? Like, oh, we just stayed at home and like, red and stuff. We just chilled at home. But then when I say like, oh yeah, my family like drove to San Mateo to go to this sushi place that we really like. And, San Mateo is pretty far from Concord. And but we would drive that length to go there because we just loved the food there. And like, we would just, again, like drive any distance to go to a restaurant that we really liked or to try something new. And I'm really grateful for that because I love food so much. It's just my favorite way to, experience a culture when I'm traveling as well. And so I'm very grateful that my parents valued, not only our own culture's food, but exploring other cultures' foods as well. And so I think that really opened up like our horizons to like just different kinds of food out there. Yeah.
I do want to talk about restaurants and your favorite restaurant order, but I do have a question about your dad and recipes. How do you think he feels when you and your sister like text him for recipes and ask him about things that he cooks?
Oh, I think he's super excited about it. Like I think every time we ask him, he's like, oh, okay. Like he'll just like go all in with like giving us the recipe and making sure that like, it's this particular kind of meat that you need to get. And so it's not only always just the recipe. It's just like, okay, but like you have to make sure that it's like this and that. And he's always super excited when we want to cook one of his dishes. And I know that he's currently writing down like recipes because we've been asking for his recipes so that, we can have them on hand for our own knowledge. So I don't know where he is at with that right now, but certainly very excited to have that compilation at some point. But yes, he's always very enthusiastic when we ask him for recipes or like any kind of food question that we have. Yeah.
Not to like get real deep about it, but like, do you think that is in some ways like a form of like, I love you too?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I would, yeah. Our family is like pretty, like we say I love you to each other all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, we're very, very close and we're very affectionate. Although I would say I'm more affectionate than my sister.
Oh, would she say the same?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
No, we're all very close. We just have like, my sister and I in particular have different ways of like showing our love. But we're all very close. I mean, definitely through food is where we show our love. Like whenever my sister and I are home, my parents are always like, okay, did you eat? Like we have food ready. We picked up food or like, what do you want to eat? Even before we come home, it's like dad will make Nilaga, but like, what do you want to have for dinner? It's like, we like are meal planning the whole week, essentially.
Sounds like a dream.
So yeah, that is what's up. That's how we roll.
Sam, take a note. We should become those parents later on.
Yes.
I think what I love about hearing stories from you and from your sister, and I realized this after her episode last time, your family is like the most wholesome family. Like her episode was the most wholesome one we'd ever had. All of your stories there's no like, actually, this was like low-key traumatic for me or whatever. Like it's just so wholesome and there's so much love and it's so like sweet. And I just love it. Because I think, I mean, like it's sweet to like witness and to hear the stories and to kind of like, for me as a parent, think like, oh, there is a way to raise children in which this is the outcome and we should emulate that.
Yeah.
But also just, I don't know, it's so nice to hear because I feel like we don't hear it that much. And I feel like just kind of the nature of the show and like this is not judgment on literally anyone. But we have had, guests and episodes where someone is like, I feel like they're kind of withholding the recipe so that like I'm dependent on them or we don't say I love you or I'm sorry, but I'll get like a Costco bag or like a fruit plate or whatever. So to hear that you kind of do all of it and I love you and affection and all those things is like very heartwarming. Let's make it less mushy now and talk about sweet and sour pork.
Okay. Let's get into it.
This is your restaurant dish.
This is a dish that has to be ordered every time we go to a Chinese restaurant, and it's really just for me. I mean, everyone partakes in it, but like if it's not there, I have a meltdown. I'm just kidding. I don't. But like, I'm just not happy. It's not necessarily maybe an authentic Chinese dish, but I feel so strongly about it. I don't know. It's like, yeah, it's just something that we've always ordered specifically for me. Like it's got to be there. It definitely stems from my dad's family. So I think my sister touched on this in her episode where my dad's family, to this day, they order like a particular set of dishes at a Chinese restaurant in the Philippines. In the Philippines, their Chinese restaurants are a little different. Like it's definitely like Filipino Chinese food, but the sweet and sour pork is definitely part of that. And I'm pretty sure that is why it is now like my thing. Maybe it's like a Lugtu thing. And so I feel like I need to carry that on, and I absolutely will. And it has to be pork too. So there's this one time where we were at a Chinese restaurant, they accidentally gave us chicken, and I knew it was chicken. By the time they put it on the plate, I just knew it was chicken. And I was like, that's not. And I looked to my dad and I was like, that is absolutely chicken. Like, okay. I mean, and I'm like, send it back. And so they replaced it, but they of course like gave us like, they were like, well, you can still have the chicken, or like we can pack it up for you. And guess who that ended up going to? Nicole.
Oh, of course. Yes.
She loves that chicken.
Mm-hmm. What's hilarious about that to me, and you're allowed to like what you like again, but for me, when it's sweet and soured, it's like I can barely identify the meat sometimes.
Yeah, right? I don't know.
But you both know, like, you like the pork so much and she likes chicken so much that, like, of course the two of you would be like, oh, no, this one's mine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. There's something about that pork. And then sometimes, like, maybe it's really the sauce, honestly, not so much the meat, because I've definitely had sweet and sour pork where it was just like literally pieces of breading and like barely any meat. But I think it's just having that sauce like incorporated with like everything else that we have is just necessary for me. But yeah.
So I like highly relate to this actually.
Yeah.
Mostly because as a kid, when I would like go to my aunt's house a lot, and my aunt is probably like the most Chinese person in our family. It's like she speaks Cantonese fluently. She like has like go-to restaurants where like they know her. She can just send someone into a restaurant and be like, oh, she sent me, and they're like, okay, you're good here, and like she'll pay the bill later. Like that's how kind of like deep she is with some of these restaurants.
Yeah.
But at her house when I was a kid, she would like do a takeout order, but I didn't eat meat, so she would get like sweet and sour chicken. And then she would get a side of sweet and sour sauce.
Oh,
and I would just have like a tofu vegetable, which actually is one of my favorite restaurant dishes, like a braised tofu situation. But then like a side of sweet and sour sauce to just put on my rice. And so I, to this day, I'm like, the sauce is everything, because I'm just a sugar addict.
Yeah.
Truly. But I also like when we go, to like these like Clement Street where they have kind of like the steam tray tables, like my go-to is the sweet and sour chicken, because they don't do the pork there. But like, yeah. And so now the kids are also like, we like that, like red chicken. They call it red chicken. And so I'm like, oh, I think this, to your point, it is just passed down.
Yeah.
In a like, here's the legacy I leave you. It is a love for sweet and sour.
Yeah, and honestly, that didn't really occur to me until like recent years. Like, why is that a thing with me? So I'm happy to know that it is a family thing. And when I visited my family in the Philippines, like 11 or so years ago, I did witness that like Chinese restaurant order and the sweet and sour pork and everything. So it was kind of nice to see that all in person. And again, like I'm happy to carry this legacy on. I absolutely will. It's just, and sweet and sour pork is definitely one of my like true comfort dishes. Like sometimes I'll just order. It's hard with Chinese restaurants because like you can't really order just for one person. Like you have to order like, so I'll get like a thing of sweet and sour pork and fried rice, and that's it. Like I'm happy with that. That's fine. But then I'm like, this is way too much. Like, this is way too much. I can't.
It's for the next day and the next
Mhm.
day.
For the next day. Yeah.
That sounds great. Also, speaking of the Clement Street and the steam tray tables, one, my Sam, I think we have to go get that for lunch now because it's necessary. And two, specifically the place I'm talking about is Wing Lee and Sam Lugtu. You used to live above Wing Lee?
I didn't, not above Wing Lee. So I lived on 5th and Clement. So I lived like above Toy Boat.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
But essentially Wing Lee, because like our apartment smelled like barbecue pork like all the time. I love that neighborhood. I mean, honestly, I still think about that neighborhood so much and how lucky I was to live there. And I wasn't too familiar with the neighborhood back then because growing up, like we would go to the Sunset more so than the Richmond.
Same.
But I'd known about Wing Lee. Like our dad would pick up dim sum from there sometimes when we're in the city. And like there's so many good places there in Wing Lee, especially. Like, I loved getting their hargao and the pork siomai. Oh, and their barbecue pork bun is so good. The baked kind, like my favorite. But yeah, living there was such a dream. I definitely took that for granted, I think. It's not until like you move away where you're like, oh man, it's just such a great neighborhood. And it's still like, I've been there a few times since like moving away and it's still there. Wing Lee's still there. Like that's the vibe. I mean, there's some new places slightly gentrified, but like for the most part, yeah, it's like pretty much the same.
Did you have like a go-to Chinese spot for sweet and sour pork when you lived in that neighborhood?
So it's no longer there. They closed, like I want to say a year or so ago. It was called China First.
Oh, yes.
It's on, and it's like a corner from my apartment. I would order their, so they do a rice plate. And what I was saying earlier about like ordering Chinese food's too much for one person. And usually rice plates are kind of are special that's like only for lunch. And so for dinner, luckily they also had rice plates for dinner. And so I would order their egg fried rice with sweet and sour pork.
Yum.
Pretty often, to the point that the lady on the phone, when I would call in my order, it's like she knew who she was talking to because I would always ask for like the chili garlic sauce. And so I don't know. It's like she knew it was me.
I don't hate that, honestly.
I honestly, like, I'm not mad about that either. And there was one time where they were just super, super busy and like the wait was going to be like, typically the pickup order wait is like 10, 15 minutes. But like this time it was going to be like 45 minutes or something. Like we're so busy, but I was just like, I don't care. Like I will wait that long. It's literally just down the street. Like I will wait however long it takes for this. Yeah, that was my go-to Chinese restaurant. When my family would come and visit me, we would always like eat there as well. But sadly, it's no longer there. I think just with the effects of the pandemic, they couldn't like keep up. Unfortunately, like many restaurants set up and closing down. But yeah, that was my go-to for sweet and sour pork.
Nice. I think we didn't have a go-to for a long time because my childhood one closed.
Yeah.
And then we didn't know how to replace it. Oh, speaking of, I heard that your childhood Chinese restaurant recently closed.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, Lynn's Chinese restaurant in Concord on Clayton Road. Yeah, that was pretty devastating, to be honest. So my sister and I found out when my mom tried to call them for takeout and the number was like disconnected, just like it was a dead number. And so she looked it up on Google and it was just like closed, like permanently closed. And then when my mom texted us that, I literally screamed. I literally was here, sitting right here at my desk, and I like screamed. I was just so bummed out because, Lim's would be a place that we would get takeout from whenever my sister and I are home. Yeah, it was our childhood like Chinese restaurant. It was like all of Concord would go there, honestly. Like it was such a popular spot. I'm actually really surprised that they closed. So I guess we're on the hunt for like another Chinese restaurant in the area, but it's just one of those things where like, is it going to be as good? I don't know.
So she texted me after she found out. She was like, guess what happened? And, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like, truly condolences. Truly. And also, like, give it time. And I say this because I think now we have found what is our kind of like replacement, although we don't go as much just because our family sort of eating out habits have changed. Because my grandfather was kind of the big driver of that outside of like family celebrations. He would just be like, let's go eat out. And we're like, okay. But it took us a long time to find something that like sort of fit the vibe and the food and kind of all the things. So like, give yourself a lot of time, give yourself and the restaurants a lot of grace. Right. Nothing's going to be exactly the same. Yeah. Sometimes it's like, it's a mixture of like menu and vibes, not, a 1-for-1.
Yeah.
So, it's a process and all your family is all going to grieve differently.
I mean, I know for me, like the determining factor will be the sweet and sour pork, like no question about it.
Right.
Like,
of course.
I know that my dad finds that very important. So I feel like he'll be like, well, if Sam doesn't like the sweet and sour pork, then I'm not sure about this. No. Yeah. There's another restaurant of ours that closed, I don't know, 8 or so months ago, Loy's Vietnamese restaurant in the Outer Sunset.
Oh.
So that was like our childhood, like Vietnamese, like restaurant for like pho and everything. And I found out about that on Eater. I'm rarely on Eater. I just happened to be on there and I see this photo that I knew distinctly was like from Loy's Vietnamese restaurant. And then the title of the article was like, recent Bay Area restaurant closures. I was like, oh, hell no, like that better not be it. That better not be it. And of course it was. And they were open for like 35 years. I mean, it's a long time. I understand that like these places close because, it's been a really long time. They're getting older and, maybe their children like don't want to take it over. Like I totally get it. But it's just wild that in the past year or so, like a lot of our childhood favorites have closed down. It's like, oh no. But
we should start a closed childhood restaurant support group.
I know. Right?
Frisia, you give your speech about giving grace and acceptance, and then we all go out to try and find a new one.
Find new places.
Yeah.
Actually, that is a really good idea.
We need like an in memoriam.
That's so true.
We say all of this jokingly, and it is, fun and funny, but I do think that there is something about like when a place that holds so much nostalgia closes, like what does that mean and what does that kind of like do for you emotionally and internally? Because I know that like when our Chinese restaurant closed, like one, I was bummed because the food was really good, but two, like we went back when it opened as whatever the fuck it opened as, some Thai restaurant or whatever, and I was like, I don't like being in this space now that it's not that thing anymore. And also like, I will never be in this space with my whole family again. I can like still picture the setup of the restaurant and like where the big table was that we would sit in. And, like even Sam moved here later, like times where he was there. I took him there when he came to visit with a friend one time. And like, I know where we sat in the restaurant then. Like, it's very fresh in a lot of ways. And like, it will always be there. And so like, yes, we can have a support group and we'll do our Instagram in memoriam. But like these things I think are actually really real. And, they hold a lot for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. Thinking about it now, I'm like, man, I'm so bummed out. It's like every time like we've gone home, it's like, oh, well, there's no limbs. Like, where are we going to get food from now? And like, it does hit deep. I mean, again, like when I heard the news, I literally had like a breakdown. It was like the middle of the workday. I was like, I can't do work anymore. Like, this is too much. This is too traumatic for me. It's just that kind of part of your childhood that just is taken away all of a sudden. You're like, oh, like, I don't know. And like you said, it's like, oh, like I won't be able to like bring my future family here to like experience like what I did when I was a kid. And like, I don't know. But yeah, but then that's when you just make new memories, new places. Yeah. I'm curious what will go like into where Limbs used to be.
Will you even try it? Is Limbs your dad's Nilaga? Like you're just never going to go back there. You're never going to do another thing.
I mean, I guess it depends on what it is. Like, I mean, if it's just some like gentrified, like Asian fusion place, probably not. But if it is another Chinese restaurant, I'll be like, okay, we'll see. We'll try it out.
It's going to be like a Chipotle.
Right.
No, just kidding.
Might be.
I did want to bring up one thing that may or may not be controversial between you and your sister.
Okay.
I saw her yesterday. She knew that you were coming on today.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, sorry if this starts drama. Sorry, Nicole. We'll see. That eating out at restaurants was maybe more important to you because it was always your choice and you got your way, and she never got hers, and then she stopped trying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time.
Okay.
So it's like truly not a controversial thing. Like this almost comes up every time we're at home with our parents too. My parents will ask us like, okay, where do you guys want to eat? Ask Sam. Like,
wow.
Although I think like she doesn't really, she'll be like, oh, it doesn't really matter because like it's whatever Sam wants. I mean, I guess, that is, I don't know. I want to say in more recent times, like it's, I don't know, since my sister, as you know, like loves chicken, you know, like she'll definitely like sometimes get, like she loves her chicken from like Jollibee, like the Chicken Joy situation. So it's been, I want to say, a little bit more equal these days, but maybe it also still is like my call sometimes.
Do you feel like it was that way when you guys were younger? Or were your parents calling the shots? Or
I think it was like a bit of both. I think we just kind of went with wherever our parents wanted to eat for the most part. But then once I decided like, oh, I really like this place, we should go here, then maybe that's when I started calling the shots. Yeah. I feel bad. No, but the thing is, like, I don't know, my sister truly doesn't necessarily care. Like, she'll eat anything.
Yeah.
I think she knows that it's like, it can be really important for me, like, what we eat and what I really want to eat. Oh my God, I sound like such a brat now.
You know what you like.
I know what I like.
It's sweet and sour pork.
It's sweet and sour pork, and it's got to be pork, and it's got to be from a particular place. Yeah, I guess I can be very particular about many things.
But you also said, like, in finding a new Chinese restaurant for your family, that, like, your dad will be very supportive of your choice because it's important to him that you are happy with that. And I say that not to make you sound like a brat, but in the way of, like, it's another way in which you guys kind of support each other through food.
Yeah. I think it's important, like, for our family to know, like, okay, is everyone cool with, like, this? So it's very, like, I think we definitely take into consideration, like, what everyone likes and wants always. And it's not hard for us to agree on a certain restaurant. Yeah, that's never been an issue. But yeah, maybe I do kind of call the shots when we choose restaurants. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like, it's just a role that I've become accustomed to having.
I mean, it is a kind of leadership.
I guess so. Just making that hard to let that decision definitively, like, we are going here.
Well, the opposite is like, I don't know, you choose. Oh no, I don't know, you choose.
Yeah.
And then you're hangry when you're making the choice. And then everyone's like, oh, which is essentially every weekend with our children.
She's a grown-up.
Yeah.
She can choose if she really wants to go to a specific place.
Yes, she is grown up too. Also, I know your sister. She is not shy.
No, she's not. Yeah. No, absolutely not. I would say that I'm definitely the more introverted one. I don't know if you can tell, but she and I are very different in our personality and everything, but we're so close. Like, we're very tight and very close. But I think that's probably why we are close, because we are different and we kind of balance each other out in that way. It's funny because, like, I can make a decision in terms of, like, where we eat, but I'm very indecisive about most other things. I don't know.
Again, you know what you like. You know what you want.
I know what I like in terms of food. Everything else, I don't know. It's like I always have to consult. I mean, that's another difference between, we're kind of getting away from food a little bit, but like one of the differences that like my sister and I have like come to realize is that whenever I need to decide on something, whatever, I always like call our parents to sort of like like I need to discuss it, and I need to like I know what I'm going to decide on ultimately, but I need like a second opinion. Like I just need someone to like validate like my choice. Whereas my sister will just like decide. Like that is what, like she will tell my parents, this is what I'm going to do. And they're like, okay. But for me, and it's interesting, like we talked about this with our parents recently. It's like my dad is like, yeah, whenever Sam calls, like I know that she has already decided to do something, but she just wants to talk about it. Like I need to have that discussion. Like it's like, am I making the right choice? You know, like I don't know.
Okay, honestly, I kind of think that's adorable about both of you. Like I know that we are, I mean, we're older than you, but essentially peers, more peer to you than to your parents, thankfully. But thinking about it from a parent perspective, I'm like, oh, I want our kids to call and like, you know, talk through decisions with us and just like to help gut check them and whatever. Like, that's really sweet.
Yeah. Like I had my conversation with my dad recently about like, what kind of wiper blade should I buy? Like, I don't know. But the thing is like, I don't know, my dad enjoys being consulted in that way. Like I do know that is what he appreciates.
Yeah, well,
like,
I was going to say, it almost sounds like some of it is as much, you know, again, like asking for the recipe again.
Yeah.
Like a way to say, like, I know that this is important to you and I love you also. And so, like, I will come check in with you on these things. You know, like it is a type of cut fruit plate.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. The advice, the consultation, for sure.
Where's your mom in all of this?
Oh gosh, I know. We've been talking about my dad this whole time. She is there. So my mom, she has signature dishes, and I would say her two signature dishes is her lasagna and her leche flan, which is like a Filipino flan. Like she'll make some for not only us, but like her friends, and she also loves making. She makes us breakfast whenever we're home. So like tocino, longanisa, or just bacon and eggs. She's really into like making us breakfast too. So yes, she does play a part in all this as well.
I mean, I know that she does.
But in a very specific way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious what that was like for you as kids, or I guess you as a kid, in kind of seeing your parents both fulfill these like cooking roles, but in very sort of like distinct, different ways.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, it's like that's all we kind of knew. Like, definitely having like our dad be like the main cook in the kitchen is definitely something that like I'm grateful that we've had the experience seeing, because you know traditionally it's like mom's cooking all the time, and like you know dad comes home from work and like mom's doing everything. So it's sort of like the roles were a little bit, I mean, in terms of cooking, like, yeah, my dad was like the main cook in the kitchen. I feel like seeing that has been kind of nice for us. I love to cook, but I kind of know, like, whomever like my future partner is, like, I would prefer that, like, you know, they may, for them to also like know how to cook and like be one of those things that we enjoy doing together. Like, I think growing up with a dad who cooks, it's kind of made me realize, like, yeah, I think that's something that I would like to find in a partner as well. Like someone who not only enjoys food as much as I do, but could also like help out in the kitchen, you know, and not be just me. But
listeners at home, my Sam and I are nodding our heads profusely at all of this. Me, because he actually does more of the cooking right now, and I've been coming home from work because he works at home. And then so I'll come home and I'm like, dinner is made for the children. Thank you, by the way, husband Sam. I very much appreciate that.
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point about like what are our kids seeing in their very like young and formative ages. And it is a lot of him cooking and doing, right now a little bit more of like the domestic, like he picks them up a lot more often. And, he has got like a Friday night make burgers, and he does almost all of the breakfasts in the morning that just require like, they're not like extensive breakfasts sometimes, but like he's the one that kind of does it. And I do wonder like how that will shape them later. And so it is nice to hear that for you, it sort of manifests in like looking for a partner who is interested in that and has those skills and feels equal about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of, has shaped like what I'm looking for in someone. I think just like kind of our relationship. Well, what we've seen in terms of like, neither my mom or my dad are like doing more of one thing. I mean, maybe the cooking, but like it's always like seemed pretty equitable in my eyes that it's just, both are putting in like equal amounts of work and like raising us. But yeah, to see like our dad in the kitchen is like definitely like someone who not only enjoys cooking, but enjoys like cooking for others, like that sort of like sense of like nurturing others through food, I think is something that my sister and I have both acquired. But for me personally, like I'm definitely looking for that in like whomever I end up with.
Nice. Yay. Before we go, we have a few more minutes, mostly because I want to talk a little bit about eggies and rice.
Eggies and rice. Okay, so eggies and rice is a dish that is literally just scrambled eggs over rice. And this is something that my grandmother on my mom's side would make for me whenever I come home from school. So it was like an afternoon snack. Looking back, I was like, that's definitely a meal. But like
everything is different when you're a child. You need to eat like 6 full meals.
Yeah. So I attribute that dish to her. It's a very simple dish, but I still make it to this day. Like whenever I feel really lazy about making dinner, I always have eggs and rice on hand. So I'll scramble eggs, put it over rice, but I'll add ketchup to it. I love ketchup, by the way. It's like the one condiment that always runs out quickly, that along with Kewpie mayo.
Fair.
Yeah, it's a comfort dish in that way. It just reminds me of my grandmother and just coming home and like looking forward to eating that. Also I didn't add this to the questionnaire, but speaking of my grandmother, she would also always have buttered toast and coffee for breakfast. And she would dip her buttered toast in the coffee and eat it. Ooh. And like as a kindergartner, like a 5 or 6 year old, she would actually give me like a buttered toast dipped in coffee.
Nice.
My mom would be like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" And I remember telling my kindergarten teacher, like, that's what I had for breakfast, because that was like the question of the day. Like, what did you have for breakfast this morning? And I literally was like, buttered toast and coffee. Just like, excuse me? So yeah, I don't eat that these days, but I probably should. I mean, it's very good. Anything you dip in coffee is good. But so those two foods are definitely something that I attribute very closely to my grandmother.
First, was there anything special about the eggs?
No, not really.
Not like with fish sauce or...
No, it was just like plain scrambled, maybe with a salt and pepper over rice, and that's it. And it was just like mixed together.
Oh, mixed. Okay. Oh.
Yeah. So with the rice.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it was a bit, no, not really a fried rice, because she didn't mix the rice in with the egg while cooking, but it was literally just like rice, scrambled eggs on top.
Was this Lola Baker?
No. So Lola Baker was our great grandmother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was like, as the name says, she was big on baking, and I think Nicole mentioned this in her episode, but we have a book of her recipes, and we're making them together, like one recipe a week. So we were doing that. We did that like, I don't know, a year or two ago, but we stopped. But we should start that up again, because I think, it's part of our family's legacy, having that cookbook, having those recipes. And we've, of course, like never met Lola Baker, but to kind of feel that sense of closeness to her through making her recipes. And then also like having our mom try it and say like, yeah, like this is exactly like how this tasted like growing up, you know,
Wow.
and having that validation is really nice too, from our mom. There's this one butter cake recipe that I think is probably like the best recipe that we've been able to make, or we've made from her recipe book. It's just a very like moist butter cake. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's just so good. And we've made it a couple times already, and it's just like it hits every time. It's not like it's not the easiest to make because you need like multiple mixers and definitely like a 2-person job. But yeah, that's the one recipe that I think we've been able to like really nail. Yeah. But all the recipes are like for a lot of people, like for parties essentially. So we also need to need to measure things down a little bit. Yeah.
Or you make a lot and we'll help you out.
Oh, there you go.
With
there
that.
You go. You should do that. Yeah. I think it's like just growing up, like knowing that like, yeah, my family loves food and all that stuff. And like, we grew up like enjoying both my dad and mom's cooking and like going out to restaurants and stuff. I think I've been able to, through doing this podcast but also in recent years, like really reflect on like, okay, where do these like interests come from? Like, you know, and to know that it's just like been passed down through the family in a particular way or whatever has been really insightful, because I feel like I don't really think about our family history that much, but to think about it through this context has been really interesting and really enlightening too.
Well, it's been a pleasure for us to hear about it.
Yay.
Again, just so lovely, so wholesome. Honestly, like, you know, this is the second episode from your family. And so this is not like super new to us, but I think just us having this conversation and the way you kind of framed it is really like having me in this moment literally reflect on our own sort of food history, like our family's food history and like what I have picked up in terms of like how I view restaurants, how I view eating out, how I view cooking. And thinking about like what we actually do want to pass down to our kids in that sort of like family food culture way. And I think maybe right now they're little and I'm not doing it how I would like to, but that's fine. We have time to think about that and get on track somewhere.
Yeah.
Also pandemic. Let's just blame it on that.
Yeah.
They are not socialized to restaurants.
Yeah.
Sam, this has been super lovely. We could keep talking. Where I'm really going with this is maybe we need to have you and Nicole on together.
Would love
for
that.
Like a third thing because I'm just would love to honestly just like watch you two talk about food.
Yeah.
And where you overlap and where you like diverge.
Yeah.
Because I know that Tanola was a hot topic.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We can definitely do a deep dive on that whole debate.
Yes. Would love to host that debate.
Yeah, I would love to do that. This has been really fun. This is my first podcast, so I was really nervous, but honestly, this has been really great.
No, you're doing great. You're killing it. No, this has been really fun. I very much will have you both back on. I'm already like, oh, I should just text her later. We'll set that up. It'll be great. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners at home, we are going to get up a recipe for Sam's dad's Nilaga, and you can find it on our website at worstqualitycrab.com. And you can also find us on Instagram at worstqualitycrab. If you need to email us for any reason or you just want to, you can find us worstqualitycrabpod@gmail.com. And in the meantime, I think like, I don't know, maybe we go meet at Wing Lee for lunch or something.
Let's do that.
You guys make a bunch of butter cakes and like we'll help out with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love that. That'd be so much fun.
Let's do it.
Do it.
Well, thanks everybody. And we'll talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.